Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to go over the MZ-32 from Graupner's sequencer control of doors as used for landing gear. I have done some prelim work here because I didn't think you guys want to see me set up a model and all this kind of stuff, and this is just a very basic model. It's not like I set up a whole new jet or something. The focus here being on the sequencer itself. So I have gone ahead and in the control set menu I have defined a few outputs already, and I named them so we can see what they are, right? So I've added a couple of servo outputs for the front doors, left and right, a nose door, and then the two rear doors for the main gears as well. And then on the bottom I have added 3 actual servos for the landing gear, or not servos necessarily, outputs depending on how your landing gear is operated, right? But those are the outputs that we have. And then for the actual landing gear I have gone ahead and set up a switch to control the landing gear, in this case switch 6, and you'll see that switch 6 is set up in this fashion. So the type is a on-off switch. Down will lower my landing gear is the idea behind the switch setup. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to actually go into the sequencer and show you what we do. So we go to the function menu, go all the way to the bottom. I'm already scrolled down to the bottom, but go to the sequencer. You'll also notice that I already have sequence 1 set up here, and the reason for that is just I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. Note that if you don't do sequence 1, all the other sequences won't work, so you have to start with sequence 1. You also want to make sure that sequence 1 is the one that's the long one, the one that actually determines the full length of your sequence, whatever that may be. For in case of say sequence 2 is not of the same duration as it may be shorter, sequence 3 even shorter, whatever. If they're all the same length, that really doesn't matter. You can put them in any which way you want. It's all about the output, right? Okay, so I have set up the very first sequence, as you can see here, as what's called nose door, and I have again assigned it to that very first same switch, switch 6, set up the same way than it is for the landing gear. That way we use one switch and we do the operation. Okay, so in this case you could see I have set the nose door up to start it at plus 100, and when you activate the sequence it'll go all the way to negative 100 in this case opening the door. It could be any value in between, right? You don't have to use 100 depending on your doors and how the setup is. You might have to figure out what those values are and adjust the sequence accordingly. Okay, I'm going to go ahead to number 2 here just to show you how you go about actually setting up a sequence. In this case I'm now going to add the rear doors for the main gears, and I'm just going to choose the first door. There we go, so rear door number 1, and I am going to adjust the value. You'll see right at the bottom here there's a little green dot. That's the first starting point, and right now it is at a negative 100. For time's sake I'm just going to start there. I could have moved it all the way to the top and plus 100, but that'll take time. So I'm going to say, okay, we're going to start at this one. Now we got hit the plus button. What the plus button does, it moves my dot on the timeline. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here displayed on the screen. Those are my seconds. So right now I move to half a second, and that allows me now to, so for half a second the door is going to do nothing. You could have started right at the first one if you wanted this. Remember, this is just an example. So I am now going to start making my change, right? So I'm going to say, okay, for half a second, I'm going to leave it there. At full second, I'm going to start moving that door, right? So if I hit these chevrons on the right side, you can see that it takes me to the screen where I can actually go and hit the value that is in that box. And I know it doesn't come out very well on this camera I have right now because it's so bright there, but it shows negative 100 there. I'm going to hit the up arrow and hold it there. Unfortunately, this takes quite a time to do that. There doesn't seem to be a faster way to just drag it all the way to the top. I sure hope that Graupner takes note of this and make it easier to make this kind of change on the sequencer. Like all the other setup screens have a way of dragging that setting with a slider or something to make it quicker to make the setup. Anyway, so I'm dragging that value all the way to 100 on the top. Once I hit 100, oops, just overshot by a little bit there. A little heavy on the hand. Okay, so we have plus 100. So in this case now, my rear door has opened up, and I'm going to tell it keep it open for the duration. So to make sure that it stays the same duration as the nose doors, I am going to add with a plus. Go plus, 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 plus. I'm just going to add all the seconds. And in this case, we actually, the gear takes about 7 seconds to extend or to retract. And we give a little bit of a delay ahead of that, and I'll show you where I did that again when we get to the control set, just to give the doors a chance to actually get moving and open up. Of course, you can make that delay smaller or bigger depending on the equipment you're using. But in this case, I am going to move to 9 seconds here. Because these are the rear doors, we do not close them again once the landing gear is extended, because they need to stay open on this model. So for the nose gear and the front doors on the main landing gears, we do close those, and I'll show you how to map the front door to the main, the nose door to the main front doors as well, so that they can operate in unison, if you like. Anyway, so we have now set up all that sequence. We know what that's going to look like. You could have made that look any which way you want. In this case, it's very simple. I'm just opening the door and keeping it there for the duration, and then when I hit the switch again, it'll go the other way. Now, speaking of the switch, I have to set that up, right? So I got to go to control. I'm going to flick my switch. So it says switch 6, which is great. I'm going to change the type to the on-off. Select the bottom there as my, and so that is if the switch is all the way to the back. That's when the landing gear is activated. And so now you can see if I flip the switch back to the middle position, it'll play me through the actual sequence. Very neat. I really like this interface. Okay, so having got that set up, we can now actually go to the servo screen. So I'm just going to hit the servo button here, servo view screen if you like. And you can see in the bottom now, I have all these outputs defined. 14, 15, and 16, if you remember, is for the actual landing gear outputs, with 9 being the nose, 10 being the front door, first front door, 11 the second front door, 12 being a rear door, and 13 another rear door. Now notice that 13 is not operating yet, and I'll show you how to fix that in just a minute here. So if I flip my switch now to extend landing gear, you can see the landing gear starts moving. My doors have all opened up, and that'll give you about 9.5 seconds, and then you'll see, there we go, the doors all closed back up again, except for the rear ones. They stayed open, right? That's how we wanted that set up. Very good. So this is working, and so that takes care of the actual sequencer setup. Now, if we go back and look at our control set, you will see that I've actually on the nose in front, I already went ahead and selected the sequencer as my input to drive my 2 front doors. Notice that nose has got no input on it because it is controlled directly by the sequencer, so I'm not going to do anything there. The same for rear door 1, it's controlled by the sequencer, but rear door 2, I want that thing to be operated as well by the sequencer. And so I'm going to go and say, use that input, because that is the one that operates the rear doors. And ta-da, now I have a input on that one. And if we go back to our servo view screen, you will now see that I have 6 outputs all showing up, and if I retract my gear, the doors will open, the gears will retract, and then all the doors will switch position again. So 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 all change positions. So now all the doors are closed. The gears are retracted, all the doors are closed. We're flying. This is great. So coming in for landing, hit the gear button down, all the doors open up, the gears extend. It takes 7 seconds, and then only 9, 10, and 11 is going to switch, because those are the nose and the 2 front doors, and we are done. So I also mentioned to you just a little bit earlier, if we close the servo view, that I put in a delay for the main gear, and you can see in the plus minus column here for those outputs, I have a 2-second delay in there. So that is just to give your servo doors a chance to actually start opening and moving before the actual landing gear starts moving and coming out or going back in, just to move things out of the way. Anyway, I hope you find this video useful. Leave me comments down below, and look forward to sharing another video in the future. Bye.